Hi everyone, this is Lady Vintage Bags here. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. And if this is the first time we're meeting, then hi, how are you? Now, if you're into pre-loved, vintage or affordable luxury, then you've come to the right place because I'm your girl. So stick around and I'll show you my tips and tricks for shopping smart and also getting the most bang out of your buck. And I also do reviews on my handbags because no one else seems to be doing reviews on these handbags on YouTube. So today's video is about buying vintage, Chanel or other designer jackets and my 5 tips and tricks for making sure you get the right fit. So let's get into it. Now these tips that I'm sharing to you are going to be in no particular order, and these are the tips that I used for buying my very first Chanel ready-to-wear jacket that I absolutely love, and how I found success in getting the right look and the right fit for myself. So let me share my tips with you. Now, to watch my unboxing video of this beautiful jacket and find out where I bought it from, I'll have the video linked up above and down below. Watch it guys, I was so excited when I unboxed this, you'll enjoy it. Tip number 1, know what style and what fit you're after. So what do I mean by that? Now we all have particular styles that we already like and particular fits that we already have in our wardrobe. So my advice to you is to pick a style you already like to wear, or pick a fit that you know suits your body type. So for example, I like to wear fitted jackets, so I went for a fitted jacket. If you're someone who likes to wear loose or oversized jackets, maybe you like to wear thick knits underneath your jackets, then go for an oversized. Don't all of a sudden go for a tight one. Or if you're someone who likes box cut jackets, then look for a box cut jacket. If you're someone who likes cropped jackets, then look for a cropped jacket. I don't advise all of a sudden experimenting with a different style that you don't normally wear, particularly for your very first designer jacket. I mean, look, these are expensive. Doesn't matter you're buying them pre-loved vintage or you're buying them brand new, the boutique, it's all a lot of money and we all work hard for our money. So stick to what you know and what you personally already like and works for you. Now I have a couple of other jackets that are dupes for Chanel's, but I reach for them less, and so I'm less inclined to buy a real Chanel jacket in that style because I don't want to be spending lots of coin on a jacket that I'm not really going to reach for. So let me show you. So I have this tweed style jacket from the brand OJ, and this is really Chanel-esque and it's a good fit as well, but I never reach for this style of jacket, so I don't advise buying a jacket style that you never really reach for. So here's the fit guys, so it's not bad. But if I never reach for this one, I don't think spending nearly $1,000 on a Chanel version is going to make me reach for it anymore. So in that case, I'm just going to stick with the dupe. Conversely though, I have another Chanel dupe, and this is a cardigan. And this is kind of like a dupe for that 1995 runway style. And this is not a jacket, it's like a knitted cardigan. It's got a lot of stretch in it. And it's tight, it's fitted, and it's cropped. And now I really do like this style and the way it fits on my body, so I would spend nearly $1,000 on a Chanel version of this. So this is what it looks like guys. So as you can see, it's more fitted than the OJ jacket I was wearing, and it's got a cropped look, and it also helps to just accentuate my curves by having this sort of outward here as well. Tip number 2. Find the measurements in the listing and don't just rely on the size on the tag. Now this is a tip that I learned from 2 other YouTubers when I was researching sizes on Chanel vintage jackets. So it's Winnie Y and CC Guy CHI. So both of them are experienced Chanel jacket buyers, and they both have a Chanel jacket collection, particularly for pre-loved. So what I learned from these 2 channels is that the sizing can be inconsistent between collections, and that also Chanel jackets are made with extra fabric so they can be altered in or altered out to a certain degree. So for example, a size 36 in one collection is not equal to a size 36 in another collection, or alternatively a size 36 may have actually been altered to become a size 34 or a 38 because of the extra seam allowance inside the jackets. So it's really important to go off the listing measurements and not just the size on the tag. Additionally, sizes on tags can be missing, so there may not be any tag size available on the garment that you're looking at. Now I'm going to show you where the measurements were on the listing for this particular jacket that I'm wearing. So this is the listing for my particular jacket, and then I scrolled down and I found the measurements. So luckily for me, this did have a size tag, and plus this also had measurements. So you can see here I've got shoulder measurements, chest measurements, I've got the length, I've got the sleeve length. So those are all pertinent pieces of information for me. Now let's take a look at another ad of another jacket from the RealReal. So as you can see here, there's also listings available. Now my jacket is a size 38 and the listing on the RealReal is a size 36. Now let's put those two measurements side by side. So we've got my jacket, which is a size 38 from collection 26, and this is from the year 1991. And we also have a jacket which is size 36 from 2019. Now let's take a look at these measurements. Now they're actually quite similar. And actually, the measurements on the size 36 are slightly bigger than the measurements on my size 38 jacket. So that just goes to show you that there can be inconsistencies in sizing, and this is why you cannot rely on the size of the product alone, but rather you need to know the measurements of the garment. Now let's look at tip number 3. Know your own measurements. There's no good knowing just the measurements of the garment if you don't even know your own measurements. Now if you don't already own a measuring tape, go out and buy one. They're super cheap. So as you can see from the listings I've shown, there are some measurements of yourself that you should know when purchasing garments online. So I'm just going to demonstrate how I took these measurements myself, because you may not have someone to help you. Now you may have never taken your own body measurements before, and there are lots of guides you can find online to learn how to take your own body measurements. So ASOS have a really good guide on their website about how to take the chest or the bust, the waist and the hip, and there's also another guide that I found about how to take women's jacket measurements. So I'm going to demonstrate to you how I took my own measurements. So starting with my shoulder width. Now with the shoulder width, you can kind of line it up with where your underarms are. So for example, my underarm is about here. And it's okay if you're, not exactly in line with your underarm if you're doing it by yourself, because a centimetre off is okay for jackets. So I want to make sure you put the 0, not the end of the measuring tape. So the 0 starts here. So if I was to draw a line up from my underarm, it'll be about there, and it'll be about there. So I've got about 14 inches or about 36 centimeters. Now do keep in mind with a jacket, you do want a bit of extra shoulder so that you can do movements as well. If it's too tight, you won't be able to move your arms anywhere. So mine's about 14 inches. Next is my chest. So for the chest, you do want to get the widest part of your bust to make sure that you're able to zip up or button up the jacket comfortably. Again, you don't want it to be exactly too tight or else you won't be able to move or breathe properly. So you're just going to start from there. So where the midline or where the seam of my dress is, go around the widest part of the chest and then end again where the seam is. Now, do remember you're starting at the 0 point, not the very end of the measuring tape. It's a bit hard for me to see. Okay, so that's 41 centimeters and about 16¼ inches. So next what I want to do is check the arm sleeve length. Now for the arm sleeve length, the guide that I put up actually shows you to measure first across the shoulder down to your elbow, and then also down the length of the arm. But what I found is that the listing for my chenille jacket just gave the sleeve length from the shoulder down and did not include the part on the upper shoulder. So you may need to clarify with your listing whether it's just from the shoulder down or if it actually includes the shoulder itself. So because my listing ad only had from the shoulder down, that's how I'm going to demonstrate to you how I'm going to measure it. Now it is a little bit difficult when measuring the sleeve length by yourself. So first, I'm just going to put the 0 up here where usually the sleeve is sewn on. And then I'm just going to lengthen this down. And then with a straight arm, now depending on what sort of shoulder sleeve length you like, I think the easiest way to take the measurement is just put your middle finger, which is the longest one, on the measuring tape and just find where that lands. And that can be like your maximum sleeve length. So in my case, the maximum sleeve length I would want is 25 inches or 63 centimeters. So 63 centimeters is the absolute max I'd like. I don't normally like to wear sleeves that cover my whole hand, so ideally I'd like less than 63 centimeters. And now let's look at the length of the jacket. Now there's two ways that it can be measured. There can be a front length and there can also be the back length. Now because jackets usually go higher up the neck, the back length tends to be longer than the front length. Now if your listing says total length, most likely it's the back length because that would be the bigger of the two numbers. So in the case of my jacket, the listing had total length. Now again, it may be a little bit difficult to measure by yourself. So I would usually start with 0 at the base of my neck because that's where the collar would reach on the back of my neck. And then I just go down to where I would ideally like my jacket to end. If you're after a specific length of jacket, like for example, I want mine to end no more than my butt. So I'll just put my finger where my butt ends and see what number I get. So in that case, it's 28.5 inches or 73 centimeters. Now, if you don't mind what sort of length, then maybe the total length doesn't matter to you until you find the jacket you're looking for, and then you can figure out where that lands on your body. Some people are quite specific about where they want their jacket to stop. So if that's important to you, then you'd like to find out what is your total length you're looking for before pulling the trigger. So let's apply the measurements I got against the measurements on the listing for my jacket. So again, for the shoulder, my listing says 15, but do keep in mind, you do want to have adequate width so that you can move your arms up and down without being impeded by the jacket. Particularly also the vintage jackets tend to have shoulder pads, so that also increases the width of a vintage jacket compared to my measurements. So that's not a deal breaker so far. And we've seen so far that I, in the end, am very happy with the fit. So that just demonstrates to you that in shoulder width between what you measure and the jacket can actually be okay. Now let's compare my chest width. So for my chest, I measure about 16 inches. Now on that listing, it says 15 inches. So that's not too dissimilar from each other. And again, you do have to take into account that you may have made some slight errors in doing your own measurements as well, because it's a bit hard to do it on yourself. So now let's compare my desired sleeve length to the sleeve length on the listing. So I knew I didn't want anything more than 63 centimeters. And on the listing, they've got 58 centimeters. Now let's just see if that's going to be too short. So I'm going to set my measuring tape to 58 centimeters. Okay, so now I'm just going to hold the 0 at my shoulder, which is where usually the sleeve is attached to the jacket. And let's take a look at where that measuring tape lands. Okay, so that's around my knuckles, so that's not too bad at all. So I am fine with that sleeve length. So again, everyone has different personal preferences. If you like yours to be a little bit cropped, that still may be too long for you. So it's all up to your personal taste and checking if the measurements match up to what you want. And for the total length on my listing, it's 71 centimeters. So I'm going to pull my measuring tape out to 71 centimeters. I'm going to put the 0 at the base of my neck to where a collar would usually sit. And I'm just going to see where this lands so I get a rough idea of how long the jacket's going to be. And that's around my butt, which is absolutely what I'm fine with. So judging by the measurements on the listing and comparing them to the measurements I'm taking, this jacket is seemingly likely to fit. There are a little bit of discrepancies, like it seems 2 inches too big on the shoulder and it seems a little bit too tight on the chest. Otherwise the sleeve length seems good and the total length itself seems good. So again, taking into account possible human error on my part. Now this leads us into tip number 4. Tip number 4 is grabbing a jacket that already fits well, that exists in your closet, and checking the measurements on that garment and comparing it to the measurements on the garment you're about to buy. So guys, this is the jacket I used as my example garment. So this is a black double-breasted coat, which I find fits really well. So I'm going to see how those measurements compare to the measurements on this jacket. So just to demonstrate to you, I looked at both how this jacket fits unbuttoned, also buttoned up, and also how comfortable it is. So this jacket, I like the look of it unbuttoned, I like the look of it buttoned up, and the comfort is good both buttoned and unbuttoned. And by comfort, I also mean taking into account the need for movement. So lifting my arm up and doing this movement. If I can't comfortably move in a jacket, I may not want to pull the trigger on it. So I'm satisfied with how my body can move when doing that action and how my body can move when doing this action. And also taking into account the existing sleeve length on this jacket and the existing total length. So this is down my arm, around my knuckle as well, and this is down my body, down my butt as well. So we've got similar sleeve length and similar total length to the jacket I'm about to buy. So now I'm going to demonstrate to you how I took measurements for this jacket. Okay guys, so we're going to be starting off with the shoulder measurements. So just find where the underarm is on each side, and you want to go directly up. And that kind of lands where this seam for each sleeve starts up here. So this is what I'm talking about for each seam, where the sleeve has been sewn onto the jacket. Now you may want to push your collar flat, as that can add some extra centimeters or inches. Okay, so this is about a 14-inch shoulder width. Now my jacket has 15 inches. If you look at where 15 inches is, the seam is only going to be sewn a little bit further out, and do take into account vintage jackets do have shoulder pads, so that could be why that's going to be an inch bigger as well. So the next measurement is going to be the chest. So now for the chest, what I actually learned in my CPR course is that when you're doing compressions, you should actually do it in line with the underarm, because that's where the chest is. So I'm going to find the underarms on each side and line it up there. So the chest measurement on my jacket is actually 17 inches. Now the listing that I'm looking at for the Chanel jacket says 15 inches. So there is a little bit of a discrepancy there. I'm a pretty small chested person, so I'm happy to take a gamble on that one, as I like a fitted jacket anyway. So it being a bit tight on my small chest may not be such a big problem for me. If you're someone who's quite large chested, that could be something you may not want to gamble with. In addition, I also don't often button my jacket up, only generally when I'm cold. So even if it was a bit tight on the chest, I don't usually always button my jacket up anyway, so it's probably not going to be a problem for me and my style and how I like to wear clothes. So what I'm going to look at next is sleeve length. Now when measuring sleeve length, I generally start from the seam where the sleeve was sewn onto the garment at the top. So as you can see here, you can see this little T here, and this is the intersection, and that is usually where I start my sleeve length measurement from. So you want to put your 0 there. You don't want to put the end of the measuring tape, you want to put the 0 there. Now because a sleeve curves, you want to curve the measuring tape with the sleeve. So this sleeve length is 24.5 inches, which is about 63 centimeters. So as you know, I already said 63 centimeters was my maximum sleeve length, but I'd actually like it to be a bit shorter. And on the listing for my Chanel jacket, it's 58. So that's probably going to work out fine for me. Now the last measurement is total length. So I'm going to start my measurement from the top of the collar and work my way down. So this is about 73 centimeters, which is about 29 inches. And on my listing, it has it at 71 centimeters or 27.9 inches. So that's actually fine for me, anywhere near my butt, and I'm happy with it. So far, the shoulder seems to be a little bit bigger than this jacket, but the chest seems to be a little bit smaller than this jacket. And also the sleeve length is similar to this one, and the total length is similar to this one. And it's a little bit shorter for the sleeve length and the total length, which I'm absolutely fine with. And now that we've checked the measurements on the jacket listing against the measurements on my body and against the measurements on a jacket that I already know fits me well and that I have in person, let's go into tip number 5. Now tip number 5 is to double check the seller's return policy. you may be comfortable with buying a jacket based off the measurements you got and the measurements on the listing because you are pretty sure it's going to fit well. Or you may be a little bit iffy on the style, you may be gambling on the particular color you've got, but the seller has a really good returns policy, so you may feel comfortable doing that gamble purchase. All of these designer items cost a lot of money, so I really want to help people prevent buyer's remorse out there. So a good seller's return policy is something that may make you feel more comfortable with pulling the trigger on that. Otherwise, if it's no returns, please make sure you take the time to look through the measurements and know your own measurements before pulling the trigger. So guys, that's my 5 quick tips for helping you to have success when buying a pre-loved or vintage Chanel or other luxury designer jacket online. So comment down below, what tip or trick do you have when buying designer or Chanel jackets online? I'd love to hear your thoughts. So I'll leave some other videos here for you to continue on with. Thanks for listening everyone. Have a nice day. Bye.